Ethan knew how to survive on the streets. At 17, he had been through more than most people could imagine. 2 years ago, he ran away from an abusive home and learned to live day by day. He searched for food in trash bins and slept in empty buildings. Life was hard, but Ethan had one rule. If someone needed help, he would help them, no matter what. One rainy afternoon, Ethan was looking for food behind a cafe when he heard loud tires screeching and people shouting. Across the street, a pregnant woman stepped off the curb. She didn't see the car speeding toward her. The driver, distracted by his phone, hadn't noticed the red light or the woman in his way. Without thinking, Ethan dropped what he was doing and ran across the street. He grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her back onto the sidewalk just in time. The car zoomed past, missing them by inches. Both Ethan and the woman fell onto the wet ground, soaked and shaking but alive. The woman gasped for air, holding her chest. "Thank you," she said, tears running down her face. "You saved us." Ethan stood up quickly, wiping rainwater from his face. "Are you okay? Is the baby all right?" She nodded, still trembling. "Yes, we're fine. Thank you so much." A small crowd gathered around them, whispering about what they'd just seen. Someone called an ambulance, and another person handed Ethan a towel to dry off. But Ethan didn't stay. He quietly slipped away before anyone could ask his name or take a picture. To him, it wasn't about being a hero. It was just the right thing to do. What Ethan didn't know was that the woman he saved wasn't just anybody. She was Emma Carter, the wife of James Carter, a billionaire who owned a big tech company. Emma wouldn't forget the boy who risked his life to save hers, and her unborn child. Little did Ethan know, his simple act of bravery would change his life, and the lives of others in ways he never expected. Later that evening, Emma sat in the warmth of her luxurious penthouse, still shaken by the day's events. Her husband, James Carter, noticed her unease as soon as he walked through the door. "What's wrong?" James asked, his voice filled with concern. Emma recounted the story, how close she had come to disaster and how a stranger, a homeless boy no older than 17, had saved her life. "He didn't even wait for thanks," she said, her voice trembling. "He just disappeared into the rain after pulling me to safety." James listened intently, his expression growing serious. "Do you know who he is? Where he went?" Emma shook her head. "No, but I want to find him. We owe him everything. He saved not just me, but our baby too." The next morning, James used his resources to track down witnesses from the scene. It didn't take long for investigators to piece together details about the boy. They learned his name was Ethan, a teenager who lived on the streets after running away from an abusive home. Determined to express their gratitude, James and Emma visited the area where the accident had occurred. They spoke with local shopkeepers and residents, showing them a sketch of Ethan. Finally, one elderly woman recognized him. "He sleeps in the old warehouse down the street sometimes," she told them. "But he moves around a lot." That evening, James and Emma found Ethan huddled under a tarp inside the abandoned warehouse. He looked up warily as they approached, clearly surprised to see two well-dressed strangers in such a place. "Are you Ethan?" James asked gently. Ethan nodded cautiously. "Who's asking?" "My name is James Carter, and this is my wife Emma," James replied, gesturing to Emma. "You saved her life yesterday, and the life of our unborn child. We can't thank you enough." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. "I just did what anyone would have done," he muttered, looking away. "No," Emma said firmly, stepping closer. "Not everyone would have risked their life like you did. You're a hero, Ethan." Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm not a hero. I just saw someone in trouble and helped." James studied him for a moment, impressed by his humility. "We want to repay you for your bravery. Name anything you want, and it's yours." Ethan hesitated, taken aback by the offer. A million thoughts raced through his mind. Money, food, shelter, but none of those felt right. Instead, he thought of the one thing that mattered most to him. "I don't need anything for myself," Ethan said quietly. "But if you really want to help, I have a sister. Her name is Mia. I haven't seen her since I left home years ago. She might still be in foster care or worse. Could you help me find her?" James and Emma exchanged stunned glances. Of all the things Ethan could have asked for, money, luxury, stability, he chose something selfless, something that showed his love for his family. "Of course," James said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll do everything we can to find your sister, Ethan. You have my word." Emma reached out and placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Thank you for saving us. Now let us help you bring your family back together." For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to hope. This chance meeting, a simple act of kindness, might finally lead to the reunion he dreamed of for so long. The next day, James wasted no time in putting his team to work. He hired private investigators and reached out to social services, determined to locate Mia, the younger sister Ethan hadn't seen in years. Emma stayed by Ethan's side during this process, often inviting him to their home for meals or simply to talk. At first, Ethan was hesitant to accept their kindness. He felt out of place in their luxurious penthouse, surrounded by things he could never imagine owning. But Emma and James made it clear they saw him not as a charity case but as part of their extended family, a boy who had risked everything to save 2 lives. "I still can't believe you didn't ask for anything for yourself," Emma said one evening as they sat together in the living room. "Most people would have asked for money, or at least something practical." Ethan shrugged, picking at the hem of his borrowed sweatshirt. "I've been on my own for so long that I've learned to get by without much. But Mia, she's all I've got left. If she's safe, then maybe I haven't failed completely." Emma's eyes filled with tears at his words. She couldn't imagine the weight Ethan carried. Losing his parents, leaving his sister behind, and surviving alone on the streets. Yet despite everything, he remained selfless, thinking only of others. Over the next few weeks, updates trickled in from the investigators. They discovered that Mia had been placed in foster care after Ethan ran away, bouncing between several homes before finally settling with a caring family in another state. When James shared the news with Ethan, the boy's face lit up with a mix of relief and disbelief. "She's okay?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "She's more than okay," James confirmed with a smile. "She's thriving, doing well in school, making friends, and her foster family loves her like their own." Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he processed the information. For years, he'd feared the worst, that Mia was still trapped in the nightmare they'd both escaped. Hearing that she was safe gave him hope for the first time in what felt like forever. "Can I see her?" Ethan whispered, almost afraid to ask. "Absolutely," James replied firmly. "We'll arrange a meeting as soon as possible. You deserve to be reunited with your sister." A few days later, Ethan stood nervously outside a cozy suburban house, clutching a bouquet of flowers Emma had insisted he bring. His heart pounded as the front door opened, revealing a teenage girl with bright eyes and a warm smile. "Ethan?" Mia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Mia ran forward, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. Ethan hugged her back, tears streaming down his face as he held his little sister for the first time in years. "I've missed you so much," Ethan choked out, his voice trembling. "I thought I'd never see you again," Mia sobbed, clinging to him. Behind them, James and Emma watched silently, deeply moved by the reunion. It was a reminder of how powerful love and compassion could be, how even the smallest acts of kindness could heal wounds and rebuild broken lives. As Ethan introduced Mia to the Carters, he realized something profound. His life wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning, and this time he wouldn't have to face it alone. The days following the reunion were a whirlwind of emotions for Ethan and Mia. They spent hours talking, catching up on years of lost time. Mia shared stories about her life in foster care, the challenges she faced, and the kindness of her adoptive family. Ethan listened intently, his heart swelling with pride at how strong his little sister had become despite their hardships. James and Emma stayed involved, ensuring that Ethan and Mia had everything they needed to rebuild their bond. They arranged counseling sessions to help them process their past and offered Ethan temporary housing near Mia's home so they could spend more time together. You've already done so much for us? Ethan said one evening as he sat with James and Emma in their kitchen. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank us, James replied firmly. This is what families do. They take care of each other. Emma nodded, smiling warmly. Besides, Ethan, your courage inspired us. We want to make sure you have the support you deserve. Moved by their generosity, Ethan began opening up more. Not just about his struggles, but also about his dreams. He confided in Emma that he'd always wanted to finish high school and maybe even go to college someday. Then let's make it happen, Emma said without hesitation. We'll enroll you in a local program and cover your expenses. You've earned this chance, Ethan. Ethan hesitated, overwhelmed by their offer. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden, James interjected. You saved my wife and child. Helping you is the least we can do. With their encouragement, Ethan enrolled in a GED program while working part-time at a nearby cafe. It wasn't easy balancing school, work, and spending time with Mia, but Ethan threw himself into it wholeheartedly. For the first time in years, he felt like he had a purpose, a reason to keep going. Mia, too, thrived under her brother's influence. Knowing Ethan was nearby gave her confidence and stability she hadn't felt before. She often visited him at the cafe, bringing books or snacks to share during his breaks. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, proving that no amount of time apart could weaken the love between siblings. One evening, as Ethan walked Mia back to her house after dinner, she stopped suddenly and turned to face him. I'm proud of you, Ethan, she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. You've come so far, and I know Mom and Dad would be proud too. Ethan blinked back tears, pulling her into a tight hug. Thank you, Mia. That means everything to me. As they stood there under the fading light of sunset, Ethan realized something profound. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about connection, love, and the people who stood by you through thick and thin. And now, thanks to James and Emma, he had two families. The one he'd fought so hard to protect and the one that had welcomed him with open arms. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a new chapter. One where he wouldn't just survive but truly thrive. As months passed, Ethan's life transformed in ways he never imagined. With James and Emma's support, he completed his GED and enrolled in a local community college, studying computer science, a field that fascinated him after learning about James's tech empire. Mia cheered him on every step of the way, often helping him with assignments or quizzing him for exams. But Ethan wasn't content to simply receive kindness. He wanted to give back. Inspired by the Carters' generosity, he began volunteering at a youth shelter, mentoring other teens who had experienced homelessness. He shared his story openly, encouraging them to believe in second chances and reminding them they weren't alone. You've got this, he'd tell them during group sessions. It's not easy, but you're stronger than you think. His words resonated deeply with the kids, many of whom saw him as a role model. One boy, Lucas, clung to Ethan's advice like a lifeline, eventually enrolling in a trade school thanks to Ethan's encouragement. Meanwhile, James and Emma continued supporting Ethan and Mia, ensuring they had stable housing and access to resources. But their involvement didn't stop there. Moved by Ethan's dedication to helping others, they decided to establish a foundation aimed at assisting homeless youth, naming it Rising Hope, inspired by Ethan's journey. We want to help kids like you find their footing, James explained when he told Ethan about the foundation. Your courage showed us what's possible when people are given a chance. Ethan was overwhelmed by their gesture but also determined to contribute. He joined the foundation's board, using his experiences to guide its mission. Together, they launched programs offering education scholarships, job training, and mentorship opportunities for teens transitioning out of foster care or living on the streets. The impact was immediate. Donations poured in from across the country, and stories of transformation began emerging. Teens finding jobs, finishing school, and rebuilding relationships with estranged families. Ethan became the face of the movement, speaking publicly about overcoming adversity and the importance of compassion. You saved my wife and child, James said during one event, addressing the crowd. But more importantly, You reminded us all what true bravery looks like. Rising hope exists because of you, Ethan. Ethan stood beside him, humbled by the applause. I didn't do this alone, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. None of us can succeed without help, and I'm grateful for everyone who's been part of my journey. Through it all, Ethan remained grounded, never forgetting where he came from. He visited the shelter regularly, checking in on Lucas and other teens he'd mentored. And every weekend, he spent time with Mia, cherishing the bond they'd worked so hard to rebuild. James and Emma watched proudly as Ethan embraced his new role, not just as a survivor but as a leader. They knew their lives had changed forever the day Ethan saved Emma, but they hadn't anticipated how much he would inspire them to see the world differently. Together, they proved that kindness wasn't a one-way street. It was a cycle that created ripples far beyond what anyone could predict. Years later, Ethan stood on a stage in front of thousands of people at the annual Rising Hope Gala. The event celebrated the foundation's success, how it had transformed lives across the country and inspired similar initiatives worldwide. As he looked out at the cheering crowd, Ethan felt a deep sense of pride. What had started as a simple act of bravery on a rainy street corner had grown into something far greater than he ever imagined. James and Emma sat in the front row, smiling warmly as they watched him deliver his speech. When I stepped in front of that car years ago, Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I didn't think about changing my life or anyone else's. I just thought about doing the right thing. But what happened next taught me an important lesson. Kindness matters. Compassion matters. And no matter how small your actions may seem, they can spark a chain reaction of positive change. The audience erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. For Ethan, this moment wasn't about recognition. It was about reminding everyone present that they, too, had the power to make a difference. After the ceremony, James approached him with a proud grin. You've changed lives, Ethan, he said softly. Not just yours, but countless others. This movement belongs to you as much as it does to us. Ethan shook his head, humbled. No, James. None of this would have been possible without you and Emma. You believed in me when no one else did, including myself. Their partnership had become more than gratitude. It was proof that even the most unlikely connections could transform lives, including their own. In the years that followed, Ethan continued advocating for homeless youth, traveling across the country to share his story and inspire change. He became a spokesperson for education access and community support, reminding audiences that courage isn't always loud or flashy. It's often quiet and selfless, like stepping in front of a car to save a stranger. James and Emma remained by his side, using their resources to champion policies that uplifted overlooked groups. Together, they turned Rising Hope into a nationwide initiative, ensuring that no teen would ever feel invisible again. Through it all, Ethan never forgot the lesson he'd learned that fateful day. One act of kindness could spark a chain reaction of positive change. His simple decision to help someone in need had not only saved lives but also ignited a movement that touched thousands. One evening, as Ethan walked home under the same stars that had witnessed his struggles years ago, he reflected on how far he'd come. His journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had shaped him into the person he was today. And through it all, he'd learned one undeniable truth. Kindness always finds its way back to you. As he hugged Mia goodbye before heading to another speaking engagement, Ethan realized something profound. His legacy wasn't just about what he'd done. It was about inspiring others to do the same. And so, the ripple of compassion continued, spreading outward and touching hearts across generations. One selfless act had sparked a legacy, one that would endure long after Ethan, James, and Emma were gone. If this story inspired you, don't forget to share it with friends and family. Let us know in the comments. What's the kindest thing you've ever done or received? Your stories inspire us to keep creating tales that matter.